Imagine this. You're sitting on your back porch, sipping coffee, staring out at your own private slice of paradisia serene lake that's been in your family for generations. Birds chirping, water gently lapping against the shore, total peace. Then, out of nowhere, a letter arrives from your homeowners association claiming they have the right to take it all away under something called eminent domain. Sounds insane, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. And let me tell you, the battle that followed was a roller coaster of lies, legal twists, and outright audacity that left my head spinning. If you've ever dealt with an overreaching HOA, buckle up, because this story is going to hit close to home. But if you haven't, consider this your wake-up call about how these neighborhood watchdogs can turn into wolves in sheep's clothing. My name's Alex, and I live in a quiet suburb just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. It's one of those planned communities where everyone has matching mailboxes and perfectly manicured lawns. I bought my house about 10 years ago, right after my divorce, looking for a fresh start. The big selling point? The property backs right up to this beautiful 5-acre lake that's entirely mine. Yeah, you heard that right, private property. It came with the deed when my grandparents passed it down. They used to fish there every weekend, and I'd spend summers as a kid skipping stones and dreaming up adventures. Now, it's my sanctuary. I even built a little dock and stocked it with bass. On weekends, I'd kayak out there, forgetting about the world. The HOA, though, they've always been a pain. You know the type endless rules about fence heights, paint colors, and holiday decorations. I paid my dues on time, kept my yard tidy, and mostly stayed out of their way. But things started getting weird about 2 years ago. Our neighborhood was expanding, with new developments popping up nearby. Rumors floated around that some big-shot real estate developer was eyeing the area for a luxury condo complex. At first, I didn't think much of it, until that fateful day in spring when a certified letter showed up in my mailbox. I remember tearing it open, expecting another nitpicky fine for my slightly overgrown hedges. Instead, it was a formal notice from the HOA board. Pursuant to the association's authority and in the interest of community enhancement, it read, "We are exercising eminent domain to acquire the lake property for public use. This will allow for the creation of a communal recreational area benefiting all residents." My jaw hit the floor. Eminent domain. Isn't that something governments use for highways or schools? Not some nosy HOA run by retirees with too much time on their hands. I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke. But then I read the fine print. They claimed the lake was underutilized, and that turning it into a shared space would increase property values. They even attached a preliminary appraisal, valuing my lake at a fraction of what it was worth. And get this, they wanted me to hand it over for fair compensation, which basically meant peanuts. I felt my blood boil. This wasn't just about land, it was my family's legacy. I slammed the letter down and called my buddy Mark, who's a real estate agent. "Alex, HOAs don't have eminent domain powers," he said. "That's for public entities, not private associations. This smells fishy." That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the kitchen, replaying every HOA meeting I'd skipped. Why me? Why now? The next morning, I dug into research. Hours on Google, poring over legal forums and state laws. Turns out, in most places, HOAs are private corporations without governmental authority. They can enforce covenants, sure, but seizing property? No way. But Georgia has some quirky rules, and I worried they might have found a loophole. I decided to fight back. First step, hire a lawyer. I found Sarah, a sharp attorney specializing in property disputes. She took one look at the letter and chuckled. "This is bold, even for an HOA. Let's send them a cease and desist and see how they squirm." The response came fast. A week later, another letter, this time from their lawyer, citing some obscure clause in the neighborhood's original charter from the 1980s. Apparently, when the community was built, the developers included language about community assets that could be repurposed for the greater good. They argued the lake fell under that because it bordered multiple properties, even though my deed said otherwise. Sarah rolled her eyes. "They're stretching it thin. We'll challenge this." Things escalated quickly. The HOA started holding emergency board meetings, inviting residents to voice support for the lake project. I showed up to one, heart pounding. The room was packed with neighbors I'd waved to for years. The board president, a smug guy named Harold with a comb-over and a perpetual frown, stood at the podium. Folks, this lake could be our crown jewel, a place for picnics, fishing derbies, maybe even a small beach. But one selfish owner is standing in the way. He didn't name me, but everyone knew. Whispers rippled through the crowd. A few nodded approvingly. Others looked uncomfortable. I raised my hand. Harold, that lake is private property. My grandparents owned it outright. You can't just take it. He smirked. The charter allows for eminent domain in cases of community benefit. We're prepared to compensate you fairly. Fairly? Their offer was $50,000 for land worth at least $500,000. I stormed out, fuming. That night, anonymous notes started appearing in my mailbox. Share the wealth and don't be greedy. Someone even spray-painted HOA Lake on my driveway. Was this harassment? Absolutely. But proving it tied to the board? Tricky. Sarah advised me to document everything. I installed security cameras, started a journal of incidents. Meanwhile, the HOA hired surveyors who showed up unannounced, tromping through my backyard with measuring tapes. Get off my property, I yelled, phone in hand recording. One guy shrugged. Orders from the association. We're mapping the boundaries. Boundaries? They were trying to redraw lines to claim part of the lake was communal. I called the cops, but they said it was a civil matter. Frustrating doesn't cover it. As weeks turned to months, the pressure mounted. The HOA slapped liens on my house for unpaid special assessments related to the lake project fees I never agreed to. My credit score tanked. Bills piled up because I was dumping money into legal fees. Sarah discovered something juicy. Harold, the board president, had ties to that real estate developer I mentioned. Turns out, his brother-in-law owned the company eyeing the condos. If they got the lake, it would boost the development's appeal, lining pockets all around. Conflict of interest? You bet. We filed complaints with the state attorney general, but bureaucracy moves slow. The community split. Some neighbors rallied behind me, old-timers who remembered my grandparents. They started a petition, protect private property rights. Others, lured by promises of a fancy lakefront park, sided with the HOA. At a barbecue, my next-door neighbor, Linda, pulled me aside. Alex, I hate to say it, but think about the kids. A community lake would be great for them. I snapped back. What about my rights? This sets a precedent if they take my lake. What's next? Your backyard pool. She went quiet, but the divide grew. Then came the bombshell. The HOA filed a lawsuit, seeking a court order to condemn the property under eminent domain. Sarah prepped me for battle. This is rare, but they've got deep pockets from dues. We need evidence. I dove deeper, hiring a private investigator. What he uncovered was shocking: forged documents. The original charter didn't mention eminent domain at all. Someone had altered scans to insert that clause. Harold's fingerprints were all over item mails between him and the developer discussing acquisition strategies. The tension built like a storm. I started getting threatening calls, blocked numbers whispering, "Sell or regret it." My tires were slashed one night. Paranoia set in. I barely left the house. Friends urged me to settle, but I couldn't. This was bigger than me. If HOAs could pull this, no one's property was safe. Sarah built our case. Ownership deeds, historical surveys, the fraud evidence. We countersued for harassment, fraud, and abuse of power. Court day Ayurveda, humid August morning in 2024. The courtroom buzzed with spectators. Word had spread, drawing local media. Harold sat smugly with his team. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Ramirez, called order. The HOA's lawyer argued first. Your Honor, the association acts as a quasi-governmental body. The lake's acquisition serves public interest, enhancing community welfare. They paraded witnesses, residents testifying how a shared lake would boost morale and values. Then our turn. Sarah laid it out. HOAs are not governments. Eminent domain requires public authority, which they lack. She presented the forged documents, the PI's report, emails proving collusion. Gasps echoed. Harold shifted uncomfortably. But the real shocker? During cross-examination, their surveyor admitted under oath that boundaries were manipulated at Harold's direction. And then, the developer connection. Sarah revealed bank records showing kickbacks to board members if the deal went through. The courtroom erupted. Judge Ramirez banged her gavel. This is outrageous. Not only is eminent domain inapplicable here, but the evidence suggests criminal fraud. She dismissed their claim on the spot, ruled in my favor, and ordered the HOA to pay my legal fees over $100,000. But she didn't stop there. I'm referring this to the district attorney for investigation into forgery and extortion. Harold's face went pale. He was let out in cuffs days later. The aftermath was chaotic. The HOA board dissolved amid scandals. Several members resigned, facing lawsuits from residents who'd been duped. My liens were lifted, credit restored. The community? Fractured, but healing. A new board formed, more transparent. I got apologies from neighbors like Linda, who admitted she'd been swayed by false promises. As for me, I reinforced my fences, added no trespassing signs, and enjoyed my lake more than ever. But the win came at a cost: sleepless nights, strained friendships, thousands in therapy for the stress. Looking back, it's wild how far they went. An HOA thinking they could play God with private property? It sparks debate. Are these associations too powerful? Do they need stricter oversight? Or is this just one bad apple? The outcome shocked everyone most of all. I kept my lake, but exposed a rotten system. What do you think? Should HOAs have any power to touch private land? Or is that crossing a dangerous line? Have you faced HOA overreach that went too far? Drop your stories in the comments. I read everyone. If this tale fired you up, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life dramas. Who knows, your comment might inspire the next video.